Jovan, how are you, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you guys for having me.
Oh, Jovan, we appreciate you doing this. And I was fascinated by you were on a podcast yesterday, and you mentioned that it's possible, in your opinion, you didn't say it's for sure, but that this might be a smokescreen, the Lakers and Jonathan Kuminga, for the guy that they really want, who is P.J. Washington in Dallas. Explain your theory, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, I think to put it simply, right now it's lying season and it's posturing season. I think you're seeing that on several fronts with agents and teams, and you had the report that the Lakers and Hawks had discussed the framework around Jared Vanderbilt and a first-round pick swap. But then you're also now having it come out from the Atlanta side that they don't want Jared Vanderbilt and they want him rerouted to a third team, and that the Lakers package for Kuminga in a signing trade isn't appealing. So I feel like right now there's a ton of public posturing in terms of just these free agent deals and signing trades and whatnot. So I was simply pointing out that there's been so much smoke with this Kuminga situation, and it feels like the cards have been laid out on the table that if it were going to happen, it probably would have already happened. And it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It still technically could, but I think there's still some haggling going on of what does that look like in terms of the draft capital that the Lakers are giving up? And then also, what does it look like in terms of a potential contract? Because the sign and trade rules are, if you are acquiring a player via sign and trade, it has to be at least a 3-year deal. So if the Lakers are out there trying to offer him a 2-year, $20 million deal, that would be via cap space. And that would be via them clearing that cap space to sign him. If it's a sign and trade, they got to give him a 3-year deal. At which point, they're taking on some risk there in terms of what does that look like? How much money are they actually committing long-term to Jonathan Kuminga, who's obviously far from a sure thing. So my point was just that I think there's a lot of posturing going on. And that note via the report by Kobe Price was that the Lakers were not interested in P.J. Washington based on his contract. And I just feel like based on the moves they've made, they've signed a lot of 4-year deals. I think they've signed almost a quarter of the 4-year deals that have been doled out in free agency. And P.J. Washington, to me, would be a great fit. He'd be an ideal fit, even better fit than Jonathan Kuminga. And he'd also be locked up long-term on the same timeline with Kessler and Austin and Grimes and Mamu. So I just felt like that there's probably some posturing going on there between the Lakers and the Mavericks in terms of LA's interest in him. But could be wrong. We'll see how it plays out over the next several days, but I don't see why the Lakers would not have interest in P.J. Washington.
I agree with you, Jovan, but why would the Mavericks do it? Look at it from the other side. Why would the Mavericks be interested in trading P.J. Washington to the Lakers, especially considering they got all that heat for trading us Luka?
Yeah, so that's the counterpoint. Now, my counter to the counterpoint is, one, it was reported a couple weeks ago by Mark Stein, who does a great job, is as plugged in with the Mavericks as anybody, that the Mavericks are open to trading Daniel Gafford and P.J. Washington. They're looking for first-round return. Now, no one has taken a bite at that yet in terms of offering that. But if you talk to people around the league, the general rule of thumb is that 3 second-round picks are roughly worth a first-round pick. You'll see sometimes, like I look at Dorian Finney-Smith and the price that the Lakers paid for him a couple of years ago, where the Nets were looking for a first-round pick. The Lakers didn't end up paying a first-round pick price, but they gave up 3 seconds. And you'll see now, like, 3 seconds is roughly worth that. So if the Mavericks are putting P.J. Washington on the table, they can't quite get a first-round pick for him. I think 3 seconds would make a ton of sense, and the Lakers can trade up to 3 seconds, plus obviously that first-round pick swap. So I think the Lakers could get into the conversation. I think there's a possibility these two teams could trade with one another. I just think from the Dallas side, optically, you have to walk away from that trade at least coming out of it with neutral value, if not slightly positive value on your side. So again, maybe they're not going to get the first round pick for PJ Washington. They certainly couldn't get it from the Lakers, but if you walked away from a PJ Washington trade, getting 3 seconds or maybe 2 seconds in a swap for him from LA, I think the Mavericks fans would probably be okay with that. I don't think they'd love it, but I don't think they would be ticketing outside of the arena.
Right. Yeah,
deal.
nobody's turning in their season tickets. So 4
and
years.
I'll also quickly say, if you look at their moves, Dallas has been loading up in the front court. So they added Morez Johnson Jr. He just had a 20-plus point game in his debut in summer league. Like they have Derek Lively, obviously Cooper Flagg. So they're loaded in the front court. To me, if you could sell off one of these guys, PJ Washington's got a 4-year deal kicking in. To me, it makes a ton of sense to try and get off of him this summer.
So 4 years, 88 is what is still owed to PJ Washington. How does that money, if they were to do something, hypothetically, in a hypothetical world, how would they be able to squeeze that into their salary cap situation?
Yeah, so it gets a little complicated, but as long as the Lakers, they go through with their moves, the final couple moves here would be using the room exception with Colin Sexton, then finalizing the Austin re-signing, and then the Kevon Looney signing for the minimum. They'll be at 14 players, and they'll be roughly $11 to $12 million under the first apron. At about $209 million. And the reason I mention that is because they're hard capped at the first apron. They cannot go above that. But because they're technically still below the first apron, they could take back salary greater than what they're sending out. And as long as they're sending out above $8.8 million, they can take back salary roughly $9 million more. It's technically 9.1. So it gets a little complicated, but basically they could do some sort of deal where it's Jake LaRavia and Dalton Connect or Jared Vanderbilt, although that I think would require more draft capital going out. But something where PJ, I believe, is starting at like 19.3, 19.4. So as long as you're getting to 10 point something or thereabouts, you can match the salary there with Dallas. And then I think they would probably prefer someone like Jake or Dalton, or even taking back Jaden Hardy, who they previously had, just because those guys are expirings, whereas Vando has one more year. But they can make the math work. And as long as they're reaching the draft capital that Dallas is asking for, whether, again, that's 3 seconds, 2 seconds plus the first round swap, whatever it is, the math works. So the Lakers would be pushing up against the first apron and be close there. So they just got to be cognizant of that. But it could work technically in terms of the math and just staying under that first apron.
Jovan Buha, nice enough to join us. Jovan, let's say, just for sake of conversation, they don't get Kuminga and they don't get Washington. All right, so this lineup, the way it looks now, is the lineup moving forward. Who do you think starts at the forward spots? We know Luka's going to start. We know Austin's going to start. We know Kessler's going to start. Is it Grimes? Would you consider throwing a Due Thero in there? Could Cameron Carr start as a rookie? What do you think?
So I think it's going to be Jake LaRavia, based on the way that JJ Redick used him last season. Remember, there was times where LeBron was out. There was times where Rui was out, or that extended stretch where Austin was out, where he ended up being the fifth starter oftentimes,
right?
And had some success next to Marcus Smart, and it was like those two were the defensive guys. So I would see it right now. If the Lakers are playing a game tomorrow, I believe the starting group would be Kessler. He starts at the 5, guards the 5s. LaRavia, Quentin Grimes, Austin, and Luka. So Luka's the point guard offensively, but he's the secondary forward defender. Jake LaRavia is taking the primary guys on the wing, and then Quentin Grimes is taking the primary backcourt guys. Austin is the secondary backcourt defender. So I think Grimes is starting regardless, unless they add like 2 starting level guys. I think right now the question is just who's going to be that 5th guy, and it's going to be some sort of big forward type. I think clearly a Kuminga, a PJ Washington, someone like that would make a ton more sense and properly slot the rotation. But as things stand, I think Jake would be the starter, and then Mamu would be both the backup 4 and the backup 5.
All right, last thing I'm just going to throw this up there in a general way. How do you think they did, Jovan?
It's a great question. I think it's an incomplete right now for me, just in terms of we don't know what the starting group is going to be. We don't know if they're going to land that Kuminga, PJ Washington type.
Yeah.
From a macro perspective, I do think it's a successful offseason just because you landed the Walker Kessler piece, which is such a vital piece on a Luka-led team. He really wanted the A-list center. I know some people don't consider Walker Kessler an A-list center, but I'm very high on the move. He was my top target this summer, and I think people are going to be pleasantly surprised by how great he is next season. Since he entered the NBA, second lowest rim field goal percentage allowed, behind only Chet Holmgren. So this is an elite defensive anchor, rim protector, and I think the gap between him and, say, DeAndre Ayton last year, it's a massive gap in terms of the rebounding, the shot blocking, the rim protection the Lakers needed. So I felt like at a minimum they needed to land a big piece, take a big swing. They did that. The price was high, both in terms of salary and the trade price, but I think he is worth it. And I think people are going to really enjoy the Walker Kessler experience. Now, the rest of the roster, I think is TBD. Like I do view Grimes, Mamu, and Sexton as ideally high-level bench guys and not really starters. Grimes, they're taking a big bet on him as that potential 3-and-D starting guard. So we'll see how that bet pans out. But I would say if they land the PJ Washington, Kuminga, like that solid starting level forward, I would say it's an A off season because you're walking out of it 2 long-term starters, 3 high-level bench guys. You remade the group. You got younger, more dynamic, and you have like 7 of your top 8. If they don't land that guy, for me, it's probably more like a B- off season with the Kessler acquisition really carrying that.
All right. Awesome, man. Well, listen, always great stuff from you. Appreciate you, Jovan. Jovan's podcast is Buha's Block. It is excellent. I listen to it all the time. Thank you very much for coming on, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you, guys. Talk soon.
All right. See ya.
All right. There's Jovan Buha.